Ayan had never liked the rain. To him, it was always a reminder of delays, late buses, soaked shoes, and evenings that stretched longer than they should. That night was no different. The sky had turned a dull gray without warning, and within minutes, the rain began to fall in heavy sheets, drenching the streets and blurring the city lights into trembling reflections. He stood at the edge of the road, checking his phone again even though he already knew the truth: the last bus was delayed. Maybe cancelled. With a tired sigh, Ayan stepped back and scanned the empty street, wondering how a day that had begun so normally could end in such quiet frustration. That was when he noticed her. She was standing under the same old bus stop shelter, slightly hunched, as if trying to make herself invisible to the storm. A faded blue shawl covered her head, but strands of dark hair had escaped, clinging to her face. In her arms, she held a notebook close to her chest, protecting it from the rain as if it were something precious, something fragile. Ayan hesitated before stepping closer. The bus stop was barely wide enough for two people, and he didn't want to intrude. But the rain was relentless, and the thought of standing outside another minute felt unbearable. He moved under the shelter, keeping a polite distance. For a few moments, neither of them spoke. The rain filled the silence, drumming against the tin roof above them. Ayan could feel the presence of the stranger beside him, calm, almost thoughtful. He glanced sideways and noticed her eyes were fixed on the street, not watching for the bus but simply observing the rain, as if it held some hidden meaning. "Looks like it's not stopping anytime soon," Ayan said finally, breaking the silence. She turned toward him, surprised, then smiled softly. "It never does when you're in a hurry," she replied. Her voice was gentle, carrying a warmth that felt out of place in the cold evening. Ayan smiled back without thinking. "That's true," he said. "The rain has a strange sense of timing." She laughed quietly, and the sound lingered longer than the rain itself. "I'm Zara," she said after a moment, adjusting her grip on the notebook. "Ayan," he replied. "Nice to meet you, even if it's under a leaking roof." Zara glanced upward as a drop of water slipped through the crack in the shelter and landed near her feet. "It adds character," she said lightly. They fell into an easy conversation, one that felt natural despite having just met. Ayan learned that Zara worked at a small publishing office across town. She spent most of her time editing manuscripts, but her real love was writing. The notebook she carried, she explained, was filled with half-finished stories, sudden thoughts, and dreams she hadn't yet found the courage to share with the world. Ayan listened carefully, something he rarely did with strangers. There was something about the way she spoke, passionate yet hesitant, as if she was constantly balancing hope and doubt. He found himself wanting to encourage her, to tell her that dreams were meant to be chased, even when the world made it difficult. When it was his turn to speak, Ayan admitted that his life was far more ordinary. He worked long hours, carried responsibilities that were not entirely his own, and rarely stopped to ask himself what he truly wanted. Zara didn't interrupt. She listened with the same attentiveness he had given her, her eyes focused, her expression understanding. "I think ordinary lives hide the most interesting stories," she said when he finished. "People just forget to tell them." Her words stayed with him. The bus still hadn't arrived, and strangely, Ayan no longer felt impatient. Time seemed slower under that small shelter, wrapped in conversation and the steady sound of rain. For the first time in a long while, he felt present, fully aware of the moment he was in. Eventually, headlights appeared in the distance. The bus approached, splashing water along the curb as it slowed. Zara hugged her notebook closer and sighed softly. "Looks like this is it," she said. Ayan nodded, feeling an unexpected sense of loss. "Yeah. I guess so." As they stepped forward, the rain seemed lighter, almost as if it were giving them space. Zara paused before boarding the bus and turned to him. "I'm glad it rained tonight," she said. "Otherwise, I might never have met you." Ayan smiled, warmth spreading through his chest. Me too. The bus doors closed, and Zara found a seat by the window. As the bus pulled away, she looked back and waved. Ayan stood there longer than necessary, watching until the red lights disappeared into the rain-soaked street. He didn't know why, but he had the feeling that this brief encounter was only the beginning, that some moments, no matter how ordinary they seem, quietly change the course of your life forever. The days after the rain felt strangely different to Ayan. Everything looked the same crowded streets, the same long work hours, the same evening fatigue, but something inside him had shifted. He caught himself replaying the memory of that night more often than he expected, the sound of rain, Zara's quiet laughter, the way she held her notebook as if it contained pieces of her soul. He told himself it was nothing. People meet strangers all the time. They talk, they smile, and then they move on. But this felt unfinished, like a sentence that ended too soon. 3 days later, fate or perhaps coincidence intervened. Ayan stepped into a small cafe near his office during his lunch break, hoping to escape the noise of the street. The place was warm and nearly empty, filled with the smell of fresh coffee and old books. As he waited at the counter, a familiar voice drifted through the air. "Excuse me, is the seat taken?" He turned slowly, his heart skipping a beat. Zara stood there, her blue shawl replaced by a soft cream sweater, her hair tied loosely behind her head. The notebook was still in her hands. For a second, they simply stared at each other, surprised and smiling at the same time. "I was about to ask you the same thing," Ayan said, laughter slipping into his voice. They sat together near the window, sunlight pouring in where rain once had. It felt easier this time, no awkwardness, no hesitation. They talked as if they had continued a conversation that never truly ended. Zara explained that she often came to the cafe to write during her breaks. "It's quieter here," she said. "My thoughts make more sense when the world slows down." Ayan nodded. "I think that's why I like walking at night. Less noise. Fewer expectations." They began meeting there often, sometimes intentionally, sometimes by chance. What started as short conversations grew into long afternoons. Zara would read him small pieces of her writing, unfinished stories, lines scribbled in the margins of her notebook. Ayan became her first listener, the one who believed in her words before anyone else did. In return, Ayan found himself opening up in ways he never had before. He spoke about his family, the weight of responsibility that pressed on him daily, the dreams he once had but had quietly placed aside. Zara never judged him. She simply listened, and somehow, that was enough. Weeks passed, and their bond deepened. They walked together after work, sharing street food and laughter. They argued playfully about books and movies. Sometimes they sat in comfortable silence, watching the city move around them. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in shades of gold, Zara looked at Ayan and asked softly, "Do you ever feel like you're living someone else's life?" The question struck him deeply. He took a moment before answering. "Every day," he admitted. "But when I'm with you, it feels like mine again." Zara smiled, but there was something uncertain in her eyes, something unspoken. Ayan noticed it, but he didn't push. Not yet. That night, as they stood at the familiar bus stop, the same place where they had first met, Zara hesitated before leaving. "Ayan," she said quietly, "promise me something." "What?" he asked. "Promise me that no matter where life takes us, we won't forget this version of ourselves." He looked at her, understanding more than her words revealed. "I promise," he said. As she boarded the bus, Ayan realized something undeniable: this was no longer a coincidence. Their lives were crossing in ways that felt intentional, meaningful. Love was beginning to take shape, not loudly, not dramatically, but gently, like a story being written one page at a time. and neither of them knew how quickly the pages ahead would test what they had just begun. The days grew heavier after that golden evening. Ayan and Zara's bond was undeniable now, but with every stolen moment together, a quiet tension began to creep in. There were smiles and laughter, yes, but also fleeting shadows in Zara's eyes that spoke of secrets she wasn't ready to share. It was on a Thursday evening, as the city glowed under the streetlights and the wind carried the faint scent of jasmine, that the truth came tumbling out. They were walking along the riverbank, their hands brushing occasionally, hearts tethered together in a rhythm that neither dared name aloud. Zara stopped suddenly and looked out at the water, her fingers tightening around her notebook. Ayan noticed the way her shoulders stiffened, the way her smile faltered. "What is it?" he asked gently. She turned to him, her eyes glistening, but not with joy. "Ayan. I'm leaving the city. Soon." He blinked, caught off guard. "Leaving? What do you mean? Why?" Zara sighed, a sound that carried the weight of months, maybe years of unsaid words. "My family, they've arranged a marriage for me. It's happening in a few weeks. I tried to resist, but I can't fight them forever." Ayan felt his chest tighten. The air around them seemed heavier, denser, as if the night itself had paused to listen. "But, us," he managed to say. Everything we've shared. I never wanted it to end like this," Zara whispered. "But sometimes, love isn't enough to change the world around you. I don't want to hurt you, Ayan. That's the only reason I'm telling you now." The river reflected the city lights like shards of broken glass, and for a moment, both of them were silent, trying to find words that could mend the impossible. Ayan shook his head, anger and sorrow mingling in a bitter cocktail he hadn't tasted before. "You mean, all this time, it doesn't matter? You're just leaving?" "No. It matters more than anything," Zara said, stepping closer. "That's why it hurts so much. I love you, Ayan. But I have responsibilities I can't escape." Her confession tore through him like lightning. All the small moments they had shared, the cafe, the walks, the laughter, the quiet silences, suddenly felt fragile, like sand slipping through his fingers. They argued, voices rising and falling with the river's whispers. Ayan wanted to fight, to beg her to stay, to tell her that love could conquer everything. But Zara remained resolute, a mixture of determination and sorrow in her eyes. When words failed, they cried. Together, alone in the night, under the indifferent glow of the streetlights, they clung to each other. It wasn't comfort that night, it was a desperate attempt to remember the warmth before the storm. Finally, exhausted and heartbroken, they parted for the evening. Ayan walked back to his apartment, each step feeling heavier than the last. His mind replayed every smile, every laugh, every stolen glance. He couldn't imagine a life without her, yet he knew he had no power over the forces pulling her away. Zara, meanwhile, sat in her room, her notebook open on her lap. She scribbled furiously, not stories this time, but letters she would never send, words she would never speak aloud. Her heart ached for the life she wanted with Ayan, a life that now existed only in fleeting dreams. That night, both of them understood something bitter and cruel. Love could ignite like fire, warm and bright, but sometimes, the world extinguished it before it could burn fully. And yet, in that pain, a seed of hope remained, a fragile promise that this was not the end, merely a chapter, waiting for the right moment to be rewritten. The morning of Zara's departure arrived with a quiet, suffocating heaviness. The sky was overcast, as if even the heavens mourned the parting of two hearts that had grown so close. Ayan woke early, unable to eat or focus, replaying the events of the past few weeks in his mind like a movie he couldn't pause. Every laugh, every glance, every stolen moment now felt bittersweet, a cruel reminder of what was about to be lost. He met Zara at the train station, where the platform buzzed with travelers, the air thick with farewells. She stood there, holding her suitcase, her shawl wrapped tightly around her shoulders. Her eyes were the same deep pools he had fallen for, but now they shimmered with unshed tears. "Ayan," she whispered, voice trembling. He took a step forward, then stopped, unsure whether to reach for her or let her go. The words he wanted to say, the pleas, the promises, the desperate offers to fight for her stuck in his throat. In that moment, he realized that love was sometimes not about holding on, but about letting go, even when every fiber of your being wanted to fight. I I don't want to leave you," Zara admitted, tears slipping down her cheeks. "But I have no choice." Ayan swallowed hard, the lump in his throat preventing him from speaking. He nodded slowly, forcing a smile he didn't feel. Then, "I'll let you go," he said, his voice breaking despite his effort to remain steady. "Because I love you, Zara. And I want your happiness, even if it isn't with me." They embraced, holding each other as if the hug could somehow suspend time, keep the world from tearing them apart. It was a hug full of desperation, full of unsaid words, full of the grief of knowing this would be the last time for a long, uncertain stretch of life. When the train arrived, Zara hesitated at the door, looking back at him one last time. Ayan lifted a hand, not to stop her, but to silently tell her that he would never forget her. As the train pulled away, Ayan stood frozen, watching her disappear into the distance. The platform seemed emptier than it had ever been. He felt the weight of loss settle deep in his chest, a quiet, persistent ache that would not fade. Days turned into weeks, and the absence of Zara became a constant companion. Ayan found himself walking past the places they had shared, the cafe, the riverbank, the quiet streets where they had laughed under the fading sun. Each step was a reminder of what he had lost, but also of what had been beautiful while it lasted. Zara, in her new city, struggled with her own heartache. She wrote constantly, pouring every ounce of longing, every fragment of love, into her notebook. Though separated by distance, the bond they shared persisted in her words, in the memories they had created, and in the quiet hope that perhaps fate had not finished their story. Ayan learned to live with the ache, discovering that letting go was not forgetting. It was learning to carry someone's love within you, even when they could no longer stand beside you. And in that ache, he found a strange, quiet strength, a reminder that some loves, though they end in absence, leave an indelible mark on the soul. That night, he sat by his window, watching the city lights flicker, thinking of Zara. He whispered into the darkness, "Goodbye, for now." And for the first time since she had left, he felt a sliver of peace. Some love stories do not end with happy reunions. Sometimes, they live quietly in the heart, waiting for the moment when destiny decides to write the next chapter. Years passed. The city changed, new buildings rose, streets were repaved, and life, as it always does, moved forward. But Ayan carried a quiet part of the past with him, a memory that refused to fade. Zara's laughter, the brush of her hand, the way her eyes seemed to see straight into his soul, they lingered in the corners of his mind, like a story he could never finish but could never forget. He had tried to move on. He focused on work, traveled for business, even attempted to date, but nothing, no smile, no conversation ever matched the connection he had shared with Zara. It wasn't heartbreak in the traditional sense, it was a quiet, persistent longing, a tender ache that reminded him that some love stories never truly end. Then, one ordinary afternoon, Ayan found himself in a small, crowded bookstore tucked away in a quiet street. He wandered past shelves of novels, letting his fingers brush over familiar titles, when something caught his eye, a book with a simple cover, her name printed boldly in elegant letters. Curiosity pried at him, and he pulled the book from the shelf. It was a collection of stories, some unfinished, some beautiful, all deeply personal. And then he saw it, a dedication on the first page, written in delicate, deliberate handwriting. "For the boy who taught me what love truly is." Ayan's heart stuttered. He ran his fingers over the words, feeling a warmth he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. Tears blurred his vision, not of sadness, but of joy, the kind that comes from knowing that love, though separated by distance and circumstance, can endure in ways the world cannot erase. He thought of all the evenings they had spent together, the laughter, the shared silences, the unspoken understanding between them. He realized that Zara's love had never left him, it had simply transformed, like a river that changes course but keeps flowing. For the first time in years, Ayan smiled without restraint. He whispered into the quiet bookstore, "I never forgot you either, Zara." And somewhere, he believed she could hear him, somewhere, she smiled too. Some love stories do not end with dramatic reunions or fairy tale endings. Sometimes, they live quietly, shaping lives, inspiring dreams, and reminding hearts that even when apart, love remains a steady, unyielding force that time cannot diminish. Ayan closed the book, a sense of peace settling over him. Love had stayed, just as it always promised, patient, enduring, eternal.